Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro, friends. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Coffee Fest. Head to coffeefest.com/leadership and check out the leadership workshop that I'll be co-presenting next week at Coffee Fest in Tacoma, Washington. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, I am going to talk about here's what I want to say. I don't usually listen back to this podcast on the apps. And so today I did, and I realized I did a terrible job of explaining what I was trying to explain yesterday. So I'm going to do that today in a more concise and succinct way. We are in a coffee price crisis, but that's not the only crisis we're in. We're in a coffee branding crisis. The crisis is caused by a number of factors that have culminated over pretty much 40 years. The price crisis is fundamentally, if we put it in its most basic terms, coffee producers are not getting paid enough money to keep coffee farming sustainable long term. Said even simpler, it doesn't make sense to coffee farm for most coffee farmers anymore. Even the big companies that are coffee farming, a lot of them are writing off their losses from their coffee farms on their marketing budgets. So for them, they have a safety net. They can lose on their coffee farms, but they recoup their costs in other ways. For smallholder coffee producers, it's a very different story. The price that most smallholder coffee farmers get paid is determined by what we call the C market. The C market is an exchange where coffee contracts are traded in futures. So what that means is that a coffee contract may be purchased today with the intention of taking ownership of that coffee sometime in the future. The exchange while the ICE exchange, which is what we colloquially refer to as the C market, the exchange for coffee is specific for coffee, but there are exchanges that exist for all commodities. So this model works loosely the same for all of them. So all kinds of grain and corn and frozen orange juice and hog and pig and all of these kinds of things can be traded in futures commodities. They were developed back in a time where a farmer would look at their crop and they would use an exchange as a mechanism to sell a portion of their crop anonymously so that they could mitigate their risk. So they may think, well, all right, I've got 100 acres of corn planted, and I don't know what the price is going to be the time I've harvested and I'm ready to sell it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 50% of that and I am going to offer it to the exchange for this much money. And then I'm going to take a risk on the other part of it that I will sell at the time that it's ready. And then if the exchange can find somebody that wants to buy that 50% worth, usually somebody who wants to secure the crop that they'll need to make a product within a certain margin of what they can afford to buy for, those two match up and they do business that way. As things moved forward, the farmer and the manufacturer that was using the commodity product weren't the only players that started operating in this space. In time, what you started to see was what we call speculators that were coming in that aren't a part of the supply chain, that would come in and say, oh, this could be a really great opportunity to make some money. If I buy a contract at X dollars and sell the contract at X plus $5 or 5 cents, then I'm going to make some money and I never have to even touch the crops. And so as this became more and more lucrative, these speculators started to influence the price of the corn or the coffee or the frozen orange juice or insert whatever commodity it was there. In coffee, what has happened is those speculators have driven the price of coffee down for a number of reasons. But the difficult thing is, now because they inject so much cash into the system, what we call liquidity, we cannot do without them in the system. You hear a lot of people say, well, why don't we just become independent of the sea? Well, because especially in commercial coffee, this is the agreed way that coffee is purchased. It is the price, the universal price that people use to set the price they pay for cherry, the price they pay for dry parchment, the price plus a little extra, which is called a differential, that they'll pay for certain coffees. And those differentials can be determined by whether it's organic or not, or whether it scores a certain amount on the cupping table. All of these different things influence the price. But the important part of this is the C market is what is determining the pretty much across the board base minimum for what people will pay for coffee. Now, if the price is driven down low, and at the moment it's sitting around $1, depending on what time of the day you're checking it, it's either a little bit below $1 a pound or a little bit above $1 a pound. Either way, it doesn't even come close to covering the cost of production for these farmers. The consequence of that is that it hasn't made sense for a very long time for most smallholder producers to farm coffee or produce coffee. Now, coffee is not like a lemon where you pick it off a tree, you put it in a box. After you've put some stickers, you cleaned it and put some stickers on it and shipped it out. It doesn't work that way. Coffee is a complex agricultural product, and it takes a lot of work to get it to the stage of being able to be exported to another country and used for whatever anyone's going to be using it for, whether it be brewing coffee, whether it be cooking, whether it be whatever the use is going to be. It is a complex process that continues to evolve that is getting it there. And there are many hands involved in making that happen. Most of the producers are realizing now, after a number of coffee crises over the last few decades that they haven't recovered from, they are realizing that this is the one that's breaking the camel's back, so to speak, and they're walking away from coffee farming. The consequence of this is going to be that we are going to run out of coffee. And if we don't run out of coffee, the coffee that's going to be available is going to be very expensive. I had a meeting with clients of mine yesterday talking about this, and my number one, like the thing I enforced the most with them, they haven't launched their business yet, but the thing that I am telling my clients right now is secure your supply chain. And that means starting to build relationships whether it be through an importer or directly to producers. Start building relationships with the producers so that you can work with them to secure their longevity and in turn secure your own longevity. And by doing this, you are securing your own supply chain, because I'm predicting that long term, if you haven't done this, there aren't going to be enough coffee producers that can supply you coffee for a price that's viable enough for you to stay in business. And this will cause a mass depopulation of businesses and hence careers in our industry. And I know that that sounds really morbid, and I know that that sounds very dramatic, but I think that this is the way it's going to go. And this is as a consequence of our own doing as an industry. We haven't taken care of coffee producers, and we need to fix this immediately. Otherwise, if the clock hasn't already run out on this, we have only a very, very tiny portal to fix this. And so I implore you, start securing your supply chain immediately. Start working with producers, and if you don't know how to get in contact with them, if you don't know how to secure your supply chain, send me an email and I can help you work through it. lee@mapperforward.org, or comment on this video and ask the questions, and I'm happy to share the information publicly of a couple of different strategies of how you can go about securing your supply chain if you don't have any contacts right away. On that note, peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day, friends.